I was standing beside my husband at our wedding reception. The room was full. 150 guests were watching us. Music had just stopped. Glasses were raised. Then my stepfather took the microphone without being invited. He was already drunk. I could see it in the way he leaned on the stand. He smiled at the crowd and said he wanted to speak from the heart. My husband squeezed my hand. I felt tension move through the room. He started talking about me, not kindly. He said I came from problems. He said my family was broken. He mentioned my late mother and talked about her illness like it was shameful. I froze. My mother-in-law sat at the front table. One saw her look away. My stepfather did not stop. He said he paid for this wedding. He said he was tired of my dreams. He told everyone I should be grateful he ever kept me in his house. He laughed. Some guests stared at the floor. Others looked shocked. I felt heat in my face, but my mind stayed clear. My husband tried to pull me closer. I stepped forward instead. I walked to the microphone. The room was silent. I took it from his hand. I said the reception was over. I told the guests they could leave and take the decorations. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain. I turned and walked out. My dress dragged behind me as I crossed the floor. One did not look back. My husband followed me out the doors. Behind us, I heard my stepfather shout my name. That was the moment I understood this was not finished. I stood outside the venue in the dark parking lot. Music was still playing inside. My husband followed me and shut the door behind us. The sound cut off. The silence felt heavy. He asked me if I was okay. I said yes, even though I was not. I told him we needed to leave now. We got into the car and drove away. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. My phone started vibrating. Calls came one after another, all from my stepfather. I did not answer. Messages followed. His tone changed fast, first angry, then demanding, then calm. I kept the phone face down. When we reached home, my husband made tea. I sat on the couch in my wedding dress. My hands were steady. My thoughts were not. I knew that speech was not random. It felt planned. My phone rang again. This time it was my assistant. She worked with me before the wedding. Her voice sounded tight. She asked if I was alone. I said my husband was with me. She told me she had seen documents earlier that week. Company papers, legal papers. She said my stepfather had been hiding things for years. She said my mother's name was missing where it should not be. I asked her what she meant. She paused. Then she said she could not talk on the phone. She said she was scared. She asked to meet me soon, tonight if possible. I agreed. As I ended the call, my husband looked at me closely. He asked who it was. I told him it was my assistant and that something was wrong. At that moment, my doorbell camera sent an alert to my phone. Someone was standing outside my house. It was my stepfather. I looked at the camera screen. My stepfather stood at my front door. His jacket was open. His face was tight. He kept pressing the bell. My husband asked if we should call the police. I told him no, not yet. I told him to stay behind me. I opened the door but did not invite him in. He spoke fast. He said I embarrassed him. He said I owed him an apology. He said we needed to talk like family. I told him to leave. He stepped closer. He said everything I had came from him, the wedding, the house, my life. He said I would regret walking out. I told him this conversation was over. He lowered his voice. He said I did not understand how much control he had. He said I was making a mistake. Then he smiled and said we would talk soon. He turned and walked away. I locked the door. My husband watched through the window until the car left. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then my assistant arrived. She came in quickly and asked me to lock the door again. Her hands were shaking. She said my stepfather did not know she was here. She said she had been copying files for months. She told me my mother had left clear instructions. She said those instructions were ignored. She said legal papers had been changed after my mother died. I asked her why she was telling me now. She said the wedding speech scared her. She said he was losing control. She handed me a folder. Inside were copies of emails and signatures. My mother's name was crossed out in places where it belonged. My assistant said there was more. She said the original documents were not in the office anymore. She said they were moved to a private location. I asked her where. She looked at me and said she thought my stepfather had them. Then my phone buzzed again. A message from him appeared on the screen. "We need to talk tonight. This is not a request." I sat at the table with my husband and my assistant. The folder lay open between us. The documents were clear. Dates did not match. Signatures looked forced. My mother's name appeared only where it helped him. My assistant said my mother had planned everything before she died. She said my mother never trusted my stepfather with control. She said there was a backup plan. I asked what that meant. She told me my mother had opened a safety deposit box years ago. She said my stepfather never knew about it. She said only one person had the key. That person was not my stepfather. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. My name was written on it in my mother's handwriting. My chest tightened, but my hands stayed steady. Inside was a key and a note. The note was short. It told me to trust facts, not fear. It told me the truth was stored where no one could alter it. My husband asked where the box was. My assistant said it was at a downtown bank. She said my stepfather had tried to access records there once and failed. I checked the time. The bank would open in the morning. I decided we would go as soon as the doors unlocked. That night I barely slept. Every sound felt sharp. I kept my phone close. No new messages came, which worried me more. Just before sunrise, my assistant sent me a text. She said someone had been searching her desk at the office overnight. She said files were missing. I told her not to go back there. I told her to meet us at the bank instead. As we prepared to leave, my husband checked outside. A car was parked across the street. The engine was running. He looked at me and said someone was watching the house. I grabbed my coat and the key. If my stepfather knew about the box, we were already too late. We reached the bank just as it opened. My husband stayed close to me. My assistant arrived a minute later. She kept looking over her shoulder. Inside, I showed my ID and the key. The clerk checked the records and led me to a private room. My name was already listed as the authorized person. That confirmed what my assistant said. The box was small but heavy. I placed it on the table and opened it. Inside were 3 items: a folder, a USB drive, a sealed envelope. The folder held my mother's real will. The date was clear. The signatures were valid. Everything she owned was meant for me. Control was never given to my stepfather. The sealed envelope contained copies of another will. This one looked rushed. The date was close to my mother's death. The writing was uneven. I knew she could not have signed it like that. My assistant said that was the version my stepfather used. She said he filed it days after the funeral. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. Emails filled the screen, messages between my stepfather and his lawyer. They discussed changing documents. They discussed witnesses. They discussed timing. One message stood out. He wrote that my mother would never know. My hands tightened around the laptop. My husband read every line. He said we needed legal help now. As we closed the box, my phone rang. It was my stepfather. I did not answer. Then a text appeared. "I know you went to the bank." My assistant went pale. I looked toward the window. The same car from my street was parked across the road. My stepfather was no longer guessing. He was tracking us. We left the bank fast. My husband drove. My assistant sat in the back. No one spoke until we were far from the building. I called a lawyer my mother once trusted. His office agreed to see me the same day. I sent him copies of the documents and the emails. Inside the office, he reviewed everything in silence. When he finished, he looked at me and said the will used by my stepfather was forged. He said the evidence was strong. He explained how my stepfather gained control. He filed the fake will first. He moved assets before anyone questioned it. He relied on fear and delay. My assistant confirmed that company records were changed soon after my mother died. She said anyone who asked questions was pushed out. The lawyer warned me this would not stay quiet. He said my stepfather would fight. He said I needed to act fast. As we left the office, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother-in-law. She asked why there were rumors spreading about the company. She asked if I was causing trouble. I told her I was protecting what belonged to my mother. She went silent. Minutes later, my assistant received a message from work. She was fired. No warning, no reason. She started crying but did not panic. She said this confirmed everything. She said my stepfather knew he was exposed. That evening, my husband noticed a car following us on the highway. It stayed close. Every turn matched ours. We pulled into a crowded lot and waited. The car stopped behind us. A man stepped out and took photos of us. He did not hide it. My husband asked if we should confront him. I said number one told him to drive. As we left, my phone buzzed with a new message. Last chance to walk away. I knew then this was no longer about documents. It was about control. We went home and locked every door. My husband checked the windows. I told my assistant to stay with us. She agreed without hesitation. She finally told me everything. She said my stepfather kept 2 assistants, one official, one hidden. She was the hidden one. Her job was to watch files and report names. She said she was paid to stay silent. She said he stored original documents outside the office, a private storage unit under another name. She said she once saw the access code written on his desk. I asked her why she never spoke before. She said he threatened her career. She said he showed her how easily he could destroy people. She believed him. My husband asked if she remembered the location. She nodded. She said it was near the old industrial area. She said the unit number was marked in red in his notebook. I decided we would go there the next morning. I wanted proof he could not erase. That night the power cut out for 3 seconds, just long enough to scare us. When it came back, my phone had 3 missed calls from a block number. My assistant checked her email. Her work account was gone. Her personal account showed a warning. Someone had tried to access it. She started shaking. She said this was how he worked, first pressure, then isolation. My husband said we should leave the house. I agreed. As we packed, my doorbell camera sent another alert. The same man from the parking lot stood outside again. This time he held a phone to his ear. He looked straight into the camera and smiled. Then my phone rang. It was my stepfather. He said he knew where we were going in the morning. He said we would not like what we found there. The call ended before I could respond. We left the house before sunrise. My husband drove. My assistant gave directions. The streets were empty. The storage facility sat behind old warehouses. The gate was open. That worried me. We parked far from the entrance and walked. The unit number matched what my assistant remembered. The lock was new. That meant someone had been there recently. My assistant entered the code. The door rolled up slowly. Inside were boxes and file cabinets. I moved straight to the metal drawer marked with my mother's initials. My hands shook once, then stopped. The files were original contracts, patent drafts, signed agreements. My mother's notes filled the margins. Everything was dated years before my stepfather claimed ownership. My husband found another box. It held cash records and loan documents. Some were in family members' names. My assistant opened a laptop found in a case. It was not password protected. Emails loaded immediately. One message froze me. It was from my stepfather to a private investigator. It listed my movements from the wedding night until yesterday. We heard footsteps outside. The metal door began to lower. My husband rushed forward and pushed it up. A man stood there. It was the same one from before. He said nothing, he just watched us. My assistant whispered that we needed to leave. I grabbed the most important files and the laptop. The man stepped closer. He said my stepfather wanted the documents back. He said we could walk away without trouble. I told him no. My husband pulled me back as another car pulled up behind us. A second man stepped out. They were blocking the exit. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from my stepfather appeared. You should have stayed quiet. The 2 men moved closer. One stood by the door, the other blocked the path to the car. Neither raised his voice. That made it worse. I told my husband to start recording on his phone. I stepped forward and said we were leaving. The man near the door said the files belonged to his employer. I said the files belonged to my mother. My assistant suddenly shouted. She pointed past them. A security truck turned into the lane. The men hesitated. That pause was enough. My husband grabbed my hand. We ran. The man near the car tried to stop us. He slipped on loose gravel. We reached our car and locked the doors. The second man banged on the window once, then stepped back. The security truck slowed but did not stop. We drove out fast, no one followed us. My assistant started crying, she kept apologizing. I told her she did the right thing. We drove straight to the lawyer's office. I handed him the files and the laptop. He did not smile, he only nodded. He said this changed everything. He said my stepfather crossed a legal line by sending people after us. As we left, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother-in-law. Her voice sounded different. She asked if my stepfather was in trouble. I told her the truth was coming out. She hung up without another word. That night, news broke online. A government contract tied to my stepfather's company was under review. Ownership issues were mentioned. My assistant showed me a message she received from an unknown number. It said, "You chose the wrong side." I turned off my phone. Outside, a car drove past our house slowly. Its headlights stayed off. The next morning, my stepfather sent a group message. He demanded a family meeting at his house. He said my behavior was unstable. He said everyone needed to hear the truth. I knew what he was trying to do. He wanted control. He wanted witnesses. My husband told me not to go. My assistant agreed. I decided to go anyway. We arrived together. My husband stayed beside me. My assistant waited in the car with her phone ready. Inside, the living room was full. Relatives sat in silence. My mother-in-law was there. She would not look at me. My stepfather stood near the fireplace. He spoke like a judge. He said I was lying. He said I was trying to steal from him. He said grief had made me confused. I let him talk. Then I placed the documents on the table. One laid out the real will, the fake one. The emails, the loan records. I said nothing while they read. The room shifted. My stepfather raised his voice. He said the papers were stolen. He said I broke into his property. He said I was proving his point. Then his girlfriend laughed. She said he could fix this like he fixed the accountant problem last year. She said money always solved things. Silence hit the room. My stepfather turned pale. He told her to stop talking. She tried to correct herself. It was too late. My mother-in-law stood up. She looked at me. She said she was wrong about me. Then she looked at my stepfather and said she wanted no part of this. I saw fear for the first time in his eyes. His phone started ringing. He ignored it. Then his assistant walked in. She said the authorities were on the way. That was when my stepfather realized the meeting was not his trap. It was mine. The room filled with noise. Family members spoke at once. Some asked questions. Others stared at my stepfather without speaking. He tried to take the documents back. I pulled them away. I told everyone to keep reading. I said the dates mattered. I said the signatures mattered. My mother-in-law asked him why my mother's name was removed. He did not answer her. He blamed me again. He said I planned this to ruin him. His girlfriend stepped back from him. She looked confused now. She asked him if the police were really coming. He told her to stay quiet. My assistant entered the room then. She stood beside me. She said she had already sent copies of everything to the lawyer and the authorities. She said the storage unit incident was reported. My stepfather's face changed. He told her she was nothing. He said she would never work again. She did not react. Outside, sirens sounded in the distance. They were not close yet. That made the wait worse. My stepfather tried one last move. He turned to the family and said this was all a misunderstanding. He said lawyers would fix it. He said blood mattered more than paper. No one agreed with him. My mother-in-law walked to my side. She said she believed me. She said she saw the truth now. My stepfather backed toward the door. He said he needed air. He said this was over. I told him it was just starting. His phone rang again. This time he answered. He listened. His hand began to shake. He ended the call and looked at me. He said the company accounts were frozen. He said the contract was suspended. He whispered my name like a warning. I met his eyes and said nothing. The sirens stopped outside the house. Someone knocked on the door opened. 2 officers stepped inside. They asked for my stepfather by name. The room went silent again. They said this was not an arrest. They said it was a notice. A formal investigation had begun. They handed him papers and asked him not to leave the city. My stepfather tried to argue. He said this was harassment. The officers did not respond. They turned and left. The moment the door closed, his phone started ringing nonstop. He looked at the screen and did not answer. His girlfriend tried to grab his arm. He pulled away from her. Family members began to leave. No one said goodbye to him. My mother-in-law touched my shoulder and said she was sorry. Then she walked out. My stepfather sat down heavily. He stared at the floor. He looked smaller than I remembered. My assistant received a message. She showed it to me. The company bank accounts were frozen. Employee access was locked. Auditors were inside the building. My husband checked his phone. News articles were already appearing. The headline mentioned fraud and disputed ownership. My stepfather stood up suddenly. He shouted that this was not over. He said I would pay for this. He said he would fix it. He grabbed his keys and left the house. That night my phone filled with messages. Unknown numbers, threats mixed with pleas. I blocked them all. Just after midnight, my doorbell camera sent an alert. I opened the app. My stepfather stood at my front door. He was drunk. He was holding a stack of papers. And he was trying to force the lock open. I watched him through the camera. He could barely stand. He kept slamming the papers against the door like proof meant force. My husband stood beside me. He asked if I wanted to call the police. I said yes. I did it immediately. Through the speaker, I told my stepfather to leave. He shouted that the house was his. He said my mother promised it to him. He said I was stealing his life. He kicked the door once, not hard enough to break it, hard enough to be a threat. I told him the police were on the way. He laughed. He said no one would believe me. He said he owned everyone. Red and blue lights flashed at the end of the street. His face changed. He tried to walk away but stumbled into the railing. The police arrived fast. They asked him to step back. He started shouting again. He waved the papers at them. He said they were proof. One officer took them and looked closely. The dates did not match. The signatures were wrong. They asked him if he had been drinking. He denied it. His breath answered for him. When they tried to guide him away, he shoved one officer. That was enough. They turned him around and cuffed him. As they searched him, one officer pulled a USB drive from his pocket. He asked what it was. My stepfather went silent. They put him in the car. He kept shouting my name through the window. The car drove away. The street went quiet again. I stood there, shaking now, not from fear but release. My husband put his hand on my shoulder. My phone buzzed. A message from the lawyer appeared. Police just called. That USB changes everything. I looked at the door my stepfather tried to break. I knew this was no longer just a fight. It was the end. The next morning my lawyer called early. His voice was sharp and focused. He said the USB found on my stepfather was real evidence, not copies, originals. The police opened it with a warrant. Inside were files labeled with dates and names, drafts of fake wills, scanned signatures, notes about moving money before reviews. There was an audio file. My stepfather's voice was clear. He said my mother never approved the changes. He said no one would question him if he acted fast. That recording ended any doubt. By noon, investigators were inside the company. Employees were questioned. Computers were seized. My assistant was officially listed as a witness. My mother-in-law came to my house. She looked tired. She said she had listened to the recording. She said she was ashamed she ignored the signs. I told her the truth mattered more than timing. She nodded and left quietly. That afternoon, news alerts flooded my phone. The company's biggest clients suspended contracts. The government deal was officially canceled, pending fraud charges. My stepfather called from jail. I did not answer. My lawyer sent me documents to sign. Emergency control transfer papers. I was now listed as acting authority until the court ruling. That night, I stood in the office for the first time since the wedding. Employees watched me walk in. No one spoke. I looked at my mother's photo on the wall. I felt steady. Then my assistant rushed in. Her face was pale. She said my stepfather's lawyer filed a motion. He was claiming mental instability. He was trying to delay everything. I closed the office door. If he thought this was over, he was wrong. The court date was set for the next morning. I arrived at the courthouse early. My husband walked beside me. My assistant followed with a folder held tight to her chest. My stepfather was already there. He sat with his lawyer. He looked calm now, too calm. He did not look at me. The judge entered, the room stood, then everything began. The prosecutor spoke first. He laid out the charges: fraud, forgery, financial abuse. He presented the USB evidence. He played the recording. My stepfather stared straight ahead. His lawyer claimed stress and confusion. He said grief affected judgment. The judge listened without reaction. Then my lawyer spoke. He showed the real will. He showed the fake one. He showed how assets were moved before filings. He showed messages ordering silence. My assistant testified. Her voice was steady. She explained how documents were hidden and altered. She explained the storage unit. She explained the threats. My stepfather finally reacted. He shook his head. He whispered to his lawyer. He asked for a break. The judge denied it. The prosecutor asked one final question. He asked if my stepfather ever had written permission from my mother. There was no answer. The judge leaned forward. She said the evidence was clear. She said the delay request was denied. She ordered a full trial and immediate restrictions. My stepfather was taken into custody again, this time without shouting. As he passed me, he finally looked at me. His eyes were empty. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I said nothing. My phone buzzed with a message from the bank. All disputed assets are now frozen. I closed my eyes for 1 second. This was no longer about survival. It was about judgment. The trial moved fast. The evidence was heavy. There were no gaps left to hide in. Witnesses spoke one by one, former employees, accountants, even a bank officer. Every statement pointed in the same direction. My stepfather's lawyer stopped arguing innocence. He argued damage control. He asked for mercy. He asked for time. The judge did not interrupt. She waited until everything was said. Then she spoke. She said the fraud was deliberate. She said the documents were knowingly forged. She said my stepfather abused trust and authority for years. She ruled against him on every charge. The courtroom stayed silent as she listed the penalties: prison time, full restitution, loss of all control, permanent removal from the company. My stepfather stood frozen. He did not react. His lawyer touched his arm. He did not move. The judge ordered the immediate transfer of all assets back to me. She confirmed my mother's will as valid and final. That was it. Officers approached him again. This time, he did not resist. They led him away through a side door. I stayed seated. My hands rested on my knees. I felt clear. Empty, done. Outside, the air felt lighter. My husband hugged me once. He said nothing. My assistant smiled for the first time since the wedding. She said it was over. My phone buzzed with a final update from the lawyer. Ownership confirmed. Company is yours. I looked back at the courthouse doors. For the first time since my wedding day, there was no one chasing me. But as we walked away, another message appeared. It was from an unknown number. You may have one, but this is not finished. I stopped walking. I knew the damage was done. I just did not know how far it would still reach. I returned to the company building the next morning. Security let me in without questions. My name was already updated in the system. Employees gathered quietly as I walked through the office. I told them the truth. I said the company was safe. I said their jobs were secure. Relief showed on their faces. I met with the board. They confirmed the transfer. They apologized for staying silent before. I did not respond to that. My assistant was officially rehired with full protection. I placed her in a permanent role. She earned it. We began the audit immediately. Accounts were reviewed. Hidden transfers were flagged. Outside firms were brought in. By afternoon, another update came. My stepfather's girlfriend attempted to access the company safe. She was denied. Security escorted her out. She posted angry messages online. They were deleted within hours. That night, I received a prison email request. My stepfather wanted to contact me. I refused. The next day, more information surfaced. Additional accounts in family members' names, more misuse. The damage was wider than expected. My lawyer said the sentence could increase. I stayed late at the office. I stood in front of my mother's portrait. I understood her choices now. As I turned to leave, my assistant rushed in. She said the media found a new angle. They were replaying the wedding footage. The video was spreading fast. My stepfather's speech, my silence, my exit. Public reaction was brutal. I watched it once, then I turned it off. That night my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. A voice said my stepfather had collapsed in custody. Hospital transfer. They asked if I wanted to be informed. I said yes. When the call ended, I sat down slowly. I had one control. But the consequences were still unfolding. I went to the hospital alone. My husband waited in the car. I needed to see this myself. A guard stood outside the room. He checked my name and stepped aside. Inside, my stepfather lay on the bed. His hands were cuffed to the rail. He looked older, smaller. The control he once carried was gone. He opened his eyes when I stepped closer. He said my name once. His voice was weak but sharp. He said I ruined him. He said I stole his life. I told him the truth did that. He laughed quietly. He said none of this would have happened if I stayed silent at the wedding. He said humiliation made him careless. Then he said something that stopped me cold. He said the documents I found were not the only copies. I asked him what he meant. He smiled and said he planned for this. He said he always planned. He told me there was one more file. He said it was stored somewhere no lawyer had touched. He said if it surfaced, it could destroy the company again. I asked where it was. He closed his eyes and said he would trade that information for one thing. He wanted me to clear his name publicly. I said no. His smile faded. He said then I should prepare for the fallout. He said some secrets did not die with arrests. A nurse entered and asked me to leave. The guard stepped forward. As I walked out, my phone vibrated. A message from my assistant appeared. We found a hidden server. It just went online. I stopped in the hallway. If that server contained what he claimed, everything could collapse again. And this time, I did not know who was controlling it. I went straight to the office. My assistant and the tech team were already there. The server was active but hidden deep in the system. They traced it to an old backup network. It was registered under my mother's early project name. That made my stomach drop. We accessed it carefully. The files loaded slowly. Contracts, code, logs, then a folder marked final. Inside was a video. My mother appeared on the screen. The date was weeks before she died. She spoke clearly. She said she suspected my stepfather would try to steal everything. She said this message was proof. She explained the backup system. She said all control would transfer only if fraud was proven. She said she trusted me to finish it. The video ended. My assistant wiped her eyes. The room stayed silent. There was nothing damaging there, only protection. We shut the server down and secured it under court supervision. My lawyer confirmed it sealed the case completely. That night, I received one last prison message request. I accepted it. My stepfather wrote only 2 lines. You were never supposed to be this strong. I did not reply. The court issued the final notice the next morning. No appeals, no delays. My stepfather was transferred to long-term custody. I walked through the office one last time that day. Employees smiled. Work continued. The damage was over. But I knew one final chapter remained. The wedding that ended everything still waited to be finished. And I was ready to close it. 6 months passed. The company was stable. The audits were complete. Every stolen asset was returned. My stepfather was sentenced. He did not look at me in court. I did not look at him either. There was nothing left to say. The media moved on. New scandals replaced ours. The wedding video stopped trending. We held the wedding reception again. Same place. Fewer people, only those who mattered. My husband stood beside me. No speeches were allowed this time. My mother's photo sat near the entrance. I placed her favorite flowers beside it. When the music ended, I felt calm. Later that night, I checked my phone one last time. There were no new messages, no threats, no warnings. The silence stayed. I went outside and locked the door behind me. The night air felt clean. The story that began with humiliation ended with control. And this time, No one took the microphone from me. You have reached the end of the text.